What is up, guys? In today's video, we're going to have another spectating random players video where I'm going to spectate random players in Fortnite Zero Build and kind of give my thoughts on how they're playing, what they're doing differently, what they could do better, and kind of how I would play the situation. As always, if you guys do find this video helpful or informative, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, and comment down below what you think of the current state of Fortnite. We are about halfway through Chapter 4, Season 3. We have 5 weeks left. It's getting very close to the end of the season. I know a lot of players are burnt out on this season and kind of hasn't been their favorite, but I think with Epic being back from break, we'll start to see some like good sizable updates for the season. I'm very interested to see what's going to happen in this week's upcoming update. I'm going to go racetrack this game, I guess. Didn't really know where I wanted to go with this bus pass, where I could maybe go to find some players. So I think I'm going to hover here, see if anybody comes here. I think this is like a somewhat populated area. From time to time. Turns out there's no one here. But I'm just gonna do this while I'm in the car. I've had some players comment like, oh, you could just jump off Citadel and then you would be eliminated right away, and like that is true, but then we would just be spectating a random person. Like, no context of what they're going on in their fights. Whereas, like, typically, I want to spectate somebody that I think is going to land at a hot POI. And that's why I went racetrack. I feel like that is oftentimes, like, a populated area. This player's got very good crouch spamming. Always talk about that with the spray weapons. Probably doesn't matter there. It seemed like that was an AI they were fighting. But they were spamming the heck out of crouch while they were spraying that person. Super duper fast. But yeah, that's why I try to like land at a certain area. Like Brutal typically is a pretty hot POI in Zero Build, so I like landing there. Typically we're going to spectate someone being a bit more aggressive, and that's kind of like what I was hoping for in this match as well. And hopefully this aura will give us an interesting game. Seemed decent so far. It's kind of an odd landing spot just out in the field like this, but I mean maybe it works for them. I don't really know what they're doing. It seems like they're looking for somebody. They might have known that there's somebody over there or something. Like, they might have wanted to land at that temple or something, and then someone had a better drop from them, and then this is why they ended up where they are. I'm not really sure. This is, like, kind of a bizarre landing spot. Especially in the current game, because getting shockwaves or bunkers in Zero Build is very important, and landing at, like, more of a shambles spot like this, I feel like you're less likely to get those items as much. You end up just wasting a shockwave there, and that's personally not something I would do. I feel like having shockwaves in your inventory like drastically increases your chances of winning this season, especially with the explosive repeater in the game and kind of like the shockwave repeater combo where people just rain explosives down onto you. Feels like the only way to counter that is to just be like to shockwave when they do it. That way you can't be shot down on. But if you don't have shockwaves to like protect yourself, then it's going to be hard for you to play the game. I'm guessing this player is going to be working their way towards Rumble Ruins and then maybe fight the boss. Again, like I said, I'm not too familiar with this loot path, but they do seem to have like a path in mind that they're running, so maybe it works for them. This is like one of my least favorite areas. I am not a fan of the jungle biome, especially these trees. No thank you. They do have a sweat combo though. I'm interested to see how they play this. Like part of me wants to switch off this player because there's not much going on, but also they do have the sweaty aura star 1 pickaxe combo plus the fight they did earlier. They seemed like decent. Like they killed me quickly, they killed the other person quickly. That is not always the case with some of these spectating videos. Again, there's shockwaves in this house. I'm not sure why this player isn't taking them. Because I think they're very essential this season. Like Zero Build, like utility has just been important the entire time Zero Build has been a game mode, because like if you get caught off in a situation where somebody has first shot on you, you take a fight where you're like losing, you know, like the other player is healthier than you. Utility like shockwaves or bunkers even are like the only way you can like reset those situations and kind of change the course of the game. Whereas like if you're losing a fight and you have no utility, or you're like out in the open and you got bad timing, and you have no utility or anything, like that, nothing is going to change on that fight. Like, you're just going to lose, you know? And on the flip side, like, if you get good timing on somebody and they start shockwaving and you have no shockwaves to chase, there's not really going to be much you can do there. This player seems to be just intent on controlling this building, which I guess can be good. It's not how I would want to play the game, but they seem to think that they'll just chill here. They might be waiting for combat cache in third zone. They might be waiting to see where the vault POIs are going to spawn. I'm not sure. There is people fighting down there. We'll see if they go for that. But again, if they had shockwaves, they could just, you know, shockwave down there if needed. He has the redeploy augment. This is risky, redeploying like this, because if this Optimus Prime had decent aim, then they would just be a free beam out of the sky. I'm not really sure what's going on here. Dude, fighting in the jungle is so awkward. Oh, that Aura loses. GG's. I don't think not having shockwaves really changed anything for them there. Yeah, this Optimus just had the ideal weapon for that fight, I guess. I don't know if that was like a weird situation. The way that Aura played it was bizarre. And then they kind of get into an open 50-50, and this Optimus Prime has the exotic Maven, which is like the best weapon in the game in that type of situation. I'm interested to see what this Optimus does. They have a pretty odd loadout. No healing item at all. They have the Maven, they have one Shockwave, they have the Repeater, they have the pistol, and an MK. They have 4 weapons and utility. And I like having utility, like I said, but not having heal stinks. Imagine if they had fish here or something, or splashes. They could have healed a bit going into this fight, and that might be the difference maker. Okay, they still win the fight, but it was messy. They now have the mythic MK, but they had time to pop heals there if they had fast heals. And then they would have had a better chance at, like, not dying there. And they get the kill still, but that doesn't mean that everything was, like, perfect there, you know? That's why carrying fast heals is so essential. Especially, like, the slap splashes, the shield fish, or, like, the slurp juice. He could have gotten those off in that time, and it would have been fine. Okay, he's holding the pistol to open the vault, I think. Or that's odd. I would not have wasted one shockwave on that. Maybe he's pretty confident he'll get more. But if he was, like, holding the pistol for that reason, it would have made more sense to me. We'll see if he chooses to carry heals now. Because that would have just been a limited time problem. Like, if they were carrying no heals just so they could go and open that door, you know, that's a problem that doesn't happen anymore once they get to the door. And they did get a fight in that time, which is unfortunate, but I can understand the logic there. They do have heals now, but they still have 4 guns. Because they used their shockwave to open the door. I just don't really know what the point of having 4 guns is in this loadout. Because, like, he has the Maven. Is he, like, I feel like you don't need an SMG as much. I understand having both the Repeater and the MK, and then you can kind of use the Repeater to follow up with a shotgun if you absolutely need to. There's a player behind him with Soaring French. He's just dead now. Visual audio would have done this player well, or just listening to the game itself. But yeah, I feel like 3 guns max, and I feel like you really want to think about when you're picking your weapons, like how they complement each other and like what ranges they're good at. Because I think the SMG was pretty expendable there. And, like, let's say he sacrificed his pistol to that door and then still had the shockwave and then just had, like, Maven, Repeater, MK, shockwave heals. Then when this player, Soaring Sprint's behind him, he could have shockwaved away if he was fast to react to it. So he didn't react at all, so it wouldn't have mattered there. But he, like, walked out into a situation where he was just naturally pinched. And it's, like, there's no way he doesn't die there. Whereas, like, if he has a shockwave and he reacts quick, he could have shockwaved over to here, played that cover. He could have done more in the fight. But instead, he got bad timing and didn't react to it all and just died. But I think even if he did react to it, there's, like, nothing he can do there if he doesn't have shockwaves. And even if he does have shockwaves, that's, like, a rough situation to play. Whereas, like, you see this player, they don't have an SMG. They have utility and heals. And I feel like that's going to give them much more options in how they want to play a fight and how they can play situations that are disadvantageous. And that's huge. Like, even if you're the best player in the world, there's going to be times where you get like bad timing or awkward timing or whatever, someone gets first shot on you. And that utility, whether it's bunkers or shockwaves, personally I prefer shockwaves, but that utility is essential. It is like the only thing you can do to kind of turn the tides of those fights. And I feel like the only way to play and not get bad timing or unfortunate timing or an unfortunate circumstance, the only way to play and have that not happen ever is if you're just hiding the whole game. But if you're being active in the match, you're going to have times where someone gets first shot on you or catches you off guard or something. And just being able to respond to that quickly is very good. So he wants to land here and then just immediately start chucking explosive repeater shots in there. And if he had Bloodhound especially, then like he would have the person marked. He's going to land on this and kind of 50-50 it, which might work out, especially since he has the exotic Maven. But I think playing mid-range there with the repeater, not only would they have gotten damage on this opponent faster, but it would have been safer. And like I think they probably could have got that kill because they would have been getting shots on him right away. And this is why I prefer shockwaves to the bunkers, because like what does this player do now? The person that he was going to land on just shockwaved away, and now that fight is not what he was going for, and he has a bunker planted, which is great. He's not going to immediately die, but he's also not going to kill this player. Like this other player would have to over peek so hard in order to die to the player we're spectating. Even if the player we're spectating got really good opening tags there and he did get a solid amount of damage, what is he going to do with that? Like like the time it takes him to get up to that player is so high. I hear footsteps, but I think it's its NPC that he hired. In competitive, I think bunkers are better than shockwaves. Competitive and pubs are very different games. But in pubs, I would much rather have shockwaves than bunkers. Obviously, you got to take what you get. Like, I'm happy to have bunkers if I don't have any shockwaves. But if I had to choose one or the other, like I have the option of both, I would just much rather have shockwaves. And then, like, if you're in a situation where you shoot at somebody and they bunker, you can shockwave onto them. But if you're in a situation like that where you have the bunkers and the other player has the shockwaves and then they shockwave away from you, like you just can't do anything to them, you know? And that could come back to bite him later. Like, we'll see. He's getting fried here. Is this the same player that he was just fighting before? It is. He might win this fight. The Maven is good here. Okay. But like you see that's just like a very kind of not good encounter. Like I think if he played that fight a little bit differently there, and if he had shockwaves, then he could have just killed that player sooner, and then he wouldn't have had that like coin flip encounter, you know? Again, I hear footsteps, but okay, no, I was gonna say I think it's his NPC, but it's not. That's like one of the downsides of having a hired NPC is like that could be more confusing for you than otherwise. If he has visual audio on, then he would know that it's not his NPC because the NPC footsteps won't show in visuals. But that stuff doesn't apply for the spectator, so that's like more of like a more difficult for me. And this is actually the Travis Scott I think that I was standing next to in the lobby, because Travis Scott is one of the more rare skins. Again, he has a bunker there. He's like safe to heal somewhat, but this player gets in on him, and what is he supposed to do there? His like that's just a kind of a 50-50 fight that's happening, you know? Whereas like if he had shockwaves and he heard that player pushing him, then he could have shockwaved out of there and like created a different situation. But since he didn't have shockwaves, then he just has to kind of take the situation he's given, and it wasn't a good one. I think he should have lost the fight previous to that as well. I feel like the only reason he won that fight earlier was because the exotic Maven was better than the drum. One thing I don't like about what we've seen a lot this game is people have been lingering by loot way too much. And I've talked about this before in several videos, but I feel like you want to loot and then get away from there, because when you fight, other people are going to third party in. That's basically what we may have just seen. That Travis Scott might have heard that fight happening and then went over there and third partied it because he heard it happening. You know? And I feel like just being comfortable looting and kind of knowing what items you want makes it much easier to just loot quickly and then get out of that situation. Like if you're this Travis Scott, I think this loadout is amazing. Like if you want to use the repeater and you want to use the MK, you have the two best rarities of those. You have Slurps, which is like the best healing item in the game. And then I feel like the only real kind of up in the air thing would be like, does this player want to use the exotic Maven, or would they rather use like the pump or something? And so it's like, you just look through and it's like, okay, I have the exotic Maven, I'm happy with this. Okay, then cool, then get out. On the flip side, if you want a pump, then see if there's a pump. If not, then get out. You don't need to like sit there and really examine each individual item. GG. Yeah, that's just not much you can do there. I feel like the Travis Scott didn't react fast enough to him shockwaving. Like, the initial explosive repeater shots were good, but as soon as this player starts shockwaving onto you, you want to switch to the exotic Maven there, because a fight like that on the house is like prime for the exotic Maven. Like, it's perfect there. That's an NPC. That's a hired NPC down there, but that means there's a player a bit ahead of that. But if that Travis Scott we were spectating just immediately switched to the exotic Maven when this guy shockwaved, I feel like he would have had a better opportunity to win that fight. But instead he just like stuck on the repeater for too long, and then he lost that fight because he didn't hit repeater shots. Whereas like the exotic Maven, not only would it just be much easier to hit shots and get some damage, those first few shots would have just got the fire rate going, and then when the player actually landed on you, you would have had like the very high fire rate, and then like this player could have gotten killed incredibly fast. Like, we all know how insane the exotic Maven is. We just saw it there. Those first few shots weren't hitting for the highest damage, but like once you get it online, it gets like faster damage for every shot you hit. Once you get it going, like it's a very hard weapon to beat. There's 4 opponents remaining. I think this player wins the game. They've played good so far. They've played very decisive. Like you saw when that Travis Scott landed on house, they just immediately went up for it. That's a situation that a lot of players might want to avoid. But this player went for it, knowing it was like the only way for him to win the fight. And that's kind of like what I was saying before with the Maven. You saw like those first few shots weren't the most damage, but it gets the fire rate going incredibly fast. And if that player that came up to Zip had kept walking forward, then they would have gotten melted by the Maven. But like they just kind of stood there awkwardly. Player we're spectating just got fried, but he's okay here, I think. The slurp saved him. He's kind of lucky to not die there, but I still think this player will win the game. Again, that's an NPC behind the player that he was just frying. He could shockwave on that with that damage, but he opens himself up to being third-partied. I think there's still a player to his right in the tree. I think I just saw them. I think there's a player in this tree, but I could be wrong. I tried to mouse over it, but he turned again. I feel like this is good though. If you're this player, I feel like you just want to kind of exist and not overextend too much into anything, because this is like a pretty wide open zone, and it seems like most people are just kind of playing to do nothing. And so if he overextends on that player there and then ends up just getting third-partied, that'd really stink. I think he's gonna be greedy with heals here. I would just pop the slurp. These fights that are about to happen are going to decide the outcome of the game. So if I'm this player, I would just rather be max HP. It may end up working for them though. Okay, it's fine. Yeah, perfect. They get to use the slurp now and then get more. But I'm of the mind that like I would rather just use the slurp and get to full HP than worry about using like conserving heals to the max like that. Especially endgame, because he only has to fight 1 or 2 more people. It's not like you need to be saving heals for like 10 minutes from now. Still hasn't drank a slurp. I'm not really sure why, but despite that, I still think this player is going to win. I think this is a mistake. I would just drink the slurp. He's going to drink the mini and then drink the big, and it's a 1v1 now. So the next fight will literally decide the outcome of the game. I think you have a better chance of winning that fight with 1 less slurp than standing out in the open and drinking minis and bigs and potentially getting third-partied. Especially if you're a player like this. This player seems good from everything I've seen so far. I would give them very good odds of like winning the fight versus this final player, especially since the final player hasn't been active yet. It's like you just don't want to give them an in, you know? Like just use the slurp. You're good. Like I would rather have 1 less slurp than potentially get unfortunate timing in the final 1v1. It's over. GG's. To Snowy's B, good player, or Snowy 0 build probably. But yeah, they were a very good player. It's just that one minor thing with being greedy for heals, I think could have potentially cost them. It didn't, But had that final player been better and been a little bit more active, then being greedy with the heals there might have been a mistake. But that's like an incredibly niche thing to talk about. But it's just, like I said, that player was good. It's really the only thing to criticize there. But that is going to be it for this video. As always, if you guys found this helpful or informative, remember to give it a like. Subscribe if you like to see more. Comment down below what you think of this season, and I will try to see if I can find that person's Twitch and link it down in the description below. Thanks for watching.